Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So this season in particular, there has seemingly been an emphasis on the older guard of the NHL, the old guys that are nearing the end of their careers when looking at Ovechkin potentially setting the goal record and still going at like 58 goal pace. Crosby still playing an extremely high level at Four Nations. Marc-Andre Fleury it being his final season. Jonathan Quick potentially being his final season and reaching 400 wins as well as setting the record for most wins by an American goaltender. So I thought it'd be a fun idea to kind of look towards the Hall of Fame for some of those active older guys and just group every high-end active player in the NHL, whether they're about to retire or whether they're just entering the league, and kind of base that, make 10 different groupings in terms of Hall of Fame odds. It's not going to be 90 to 100% or 100% locks. Shit like that. You got to follow me on this. It's different groupings for different definitions. It's not just going to be a straight Hall of Fame odds. But yeah, let's get into it. You're gonna understand what I'm aiming for with this once we really get it going. And up first, pretty self-explanatory. No doubt locks. These guys 100% locks. Everybody outside of Connor McDavid is like over the age of 32. Most of these guys' careers are over, and they're not over, but like they're obviously their primes are over to a degree, and they're already top 75, top 60, top 10 in the case of Ovechkin and Crosby, players of all time. Yeah, beasts. Crosby, Ovechkin, Malkin, Kane, Carlson, McDavid, Kopitar, Doughty, Hedman, Stamkos all had top 5, arguably peaks in the entire NHL, racked up personal awards as well as a lot of them team awards. Everybody outside of McDavid and Carlson? Yeah. So, yeah, monster careers, no doubt locks. Next up, we got our safely in. These guys are either coming to the end of their career and safely going to make the Hall of Fame, or in the case of guys like Kucherov, McKinnon, Vasilevsky, they're going to end up being in the no doubt locks, just a little bit on the younger side. Don't maybe have those cumulative stats like some other guys. Still, safely, if they retired tomorrow, they'd be Hall of Famers. And yeah, those three, Fleury, 500 plus wins, although I think that his prime is a little bit overrated. His longevity definitely makes up for that with the career totals. And honestly, his prime in Vegas was kind of near Hall of Fame level. It's crazy how he was better in Vegas individually than Pittsburgh. But yeah, definitely Hall of Fame career. Carey Price would be in that no doubt top 10, top 12 echelon if he never got hurt, but he did never get hurt, and as a result, didn't really get a second Vezina or be able to rack up a ton of career longevity stats. Brett Burns, one of the best offensive defensemen of the 21st century in NHL history. For a 3 to 4 year stretch, he was without a doubt the best offensive defenseman in the entire NHL. Yes, maybe not the best defensive defenseman, but yeah, as a defenseman I know he played forward for a time, but as a defenseman has like over 800 points. Monster numbers. And then Sergei Bobrovsky, 2 Vezinas, one of the only guy kind of in his era, the mid to late 2010s, with 2 Vezinas, over 400 wins at this point, and really those last 2 runs for the Florida Panthers solidified him as a Hall of Famer in my books, to where he went from maybe ending up being like a tweener toss-up to now safely being in the Hall of Fame. And next up, we got safely in after an award this season. All of these guys are going to be Hall of Famers one day, but if they win their award that they're going for this season, at the end of the season, they'd be safely in. It'd be a done deal. If Draisaitl gets his second Hart or even wins the Rocket Richard, he's probably safely in the Hall of Fame, considering he already had a Hart, almost at like 1,000 points already. Monster playoff numbers as well. Connor Hellebuck, 3rd Vezina, definitely goes into safely after this. And if he goes on a deep playoff run, he's probably in no doubt, considering he's already north of 300 wins. With those 3 Vezinas, just maybe lacks that playoff success a little bit. And Barkov, that 3rd Selke, would really solidify himself as the best defensive center of his generation. I think he already is that, but the trophy case would match that. He's also already almost at 800 points, and although he didn't win the Conn Smythe, he was probably Florida's best player. He would have won it if McDavid didn't go absolutely nuclear in those playoffs. These guys elevate to that tier if they win their awards, which they're all favorites at this point to win. And Hellebuck could win the Hart as well. Forgot, of course, mention that. Next up, toss-ups, and their careers are almost over. You can convince me either way on these guys. Jonathan Quick, I'd say probably is the safest in terms of making the Hall of Fame. Never won a Vezina, and again, that's why you could make an argument for him not to be a Hall of Famer. But when looking at this guy in his 2 playoff runs, and even in the early 2010s, he was consistently putting up like +9, above 920 save percentages. He was a monster, and he did have some decent longevity. It was a little bit inconsistent, but he has had some good years mixed in. Nicholas Backstrom, it's a toss-up because, of course, he retired. He's basically retired because of injury. And now, also, like, of course, Jonathan Toews would be a no-doubt guy. Phil Kessel would probably be a very good guy. I only put active guys in terms of if they're still signed. Shea Weber's already a Hall of Famer, even though he's under contract. Nicholas Backstrom, yeah. The career totals might hold him back potentially. It's going to be interesting. I believe, yeah, he's at like 1,030. And when you look at what some of these other guys are going to end up at around his age, like guys we're going to get into, it's going to be a toss-up. He definitely is the prime of a guy in the Hall of Fame, arguably the best passer in the NHL for 5+ years, but that's definitely something interesting. Corey Perry, it depends how much you value a heart. I value it a decent amount, but outside of that, was Corey Perry a consistent top 10 player in the NHL, or was he a top 10 player in any other seasons? It's an argument. And then Chris Letang on the flip side of that, going from a heart, how much do you value the team's success? Because Chris Letang, I think he finished a Norris finalist 1 year, and part of that was because of injuries, but what's the best ability? It's availability, but he has 3 Norrises, 2 of which as the number 1 defenseman. So the career point totals are pretty impressive. If he stacks up some more solid seasons, which he has been regressing pretty rapidly the last couple of years, but if he can stack up some solid final 2 to 3 years, maybe he gets into that safely in. But right now, it's definitely a debate to a degree. Our next tier, veterans that need 1 to 3 more very good years. I think all 4 of these guys had the prime of a Hall of Famer. John Tavares, from 2013 to 2018, or definitely from 2013 to 2016 on the Islanders, was a top 10 player in the entire NHL. Finished as a Hart finalist 2 of those years. It's going to come down to longevity. I think he's going to get in. I of all people, if I say that he should get in, that's all you should really need to hear. Not saying that I'm some expert, but because I'm an Islanders fan, I can admit that. This guy's already at like almost 1,100 points. His goal numbers are really impressive. He's already like 32nd in era-adjusted career goals. So yeah, he's still going at a very high rate. He's still putting up like 35 goal, 40 assist pace this season. Yeah, he's going to be a Hall of Famer just because he has that 3 to 5 year prime on top of his longevity numbers. Like when you look at him versus Backstrom, maybe you would take prime Backstrom, but when Tavares has 300, 400 more points, 300 probably, than Backstrom, that might be a difference. Roman Josi, I think Roman Josi's peak definitely values Hall of Fame or is Hall of Fame level. The problem was he wasn't really an elite guy until he was like 24, 25, unlike a John Tavares that came out of the gates firing. So he maybe needs some more point totals to get up there. But yeah, this guy in his prime won a Norris and was a 2-time Norris runner-up in a 5-year stretch. That's no doubt Hall of Fame worthy. He just needs some more years. Brad Marchand was an all-NHL guy for like a 5 to 6 year stretch, put up like 95 point pace in the late 2000s, late 2010s, early 2020s. That's a Hall of Fame peak, but similarly to Josi, didn't quite turn into that elite guy until he was 24, 25. Still going at a solid rate. If he puts up another 2 60-ish point seasons, he'll probably have the longevity. And then Artemi Panarin, similarly to John Tavares, had that offensive peak from 2019, 2020 to last year when he had 120 points. That is definitely a Hall of Fame offensive peak, but he didn't come over until he was 24, 25 years old. So he's definitely going to need some more solid seasons. So yeah, these guys I think are going to end up Hall of Famers. If they retired today, probably not, but they're still playing at a very high rate that they're probably going to retire Hall of Famers once they get those longevity stats in. Next up, we got in their 20s and just needs 1 or 2 more superstar seasons. Cale Makar, if he wins the Norris this year, probably a Hall of Famer. I know it's crazy to say about a 26-year-old, but he would have 2 Norris trophies, another runner-up, another third place, although I don't think that he should have been a third-place guy in 2023 when he missed 22 games. His offensive peak was nuts. The 2022 season is the best defenseman season, without a doubt, that we've seen definitely since at least prime Nicholas Lidstrom. And then Austin Matthews already has 3 Rocket Richards, a Hart Trophy. If he goes out and wins the Rocket next year, I think he's pretty easily a Hall of Famer. Yes, the playoff numbers aren't there, but he's definitely the best goal scorer of his generation. 69 goals, 60 goal seasons. Even in the COVID years, 2021, he put up 41 goals in 52 games. Monster prime. Just doesn't quite have the longevity or really the playoff success to justify it, but I think one more superstar season, he'd be there. These are guys in their 20s and just need 3 to 6 more star seasons. I think these guys probably will end up Hall of Famers. I'm trying to see if I would order it, which is most likely. I think Quinn Hughes among this is the most likely, considering he won the Norris last year and would be the Norris favorite right now if he wasn't hurt. Then I would probably go with Kirill Kaprizov, just because his offensive point totals when he's been there. It's going to be a little bit tough with his longevity, but he's basically been a top 12 player since 2022. Igor Shesterkin needs to get back on track, but with his playoff numbers and already having that Vezina, he's a leg up on a lot of guys. Jack Eichel's raw point totals are going to be pretty nuts because he came out of the gates firing. Mikko Rantanen's going to be interesting. If now that he's away from Nathan MacKinnon, will he be able to put up those impressive 100-point seasons? Even not, if he just goes for 90 points the next 4 to 5 years, his raw totals will be good enough. Braden Point, as long as he can play at a high rate for the next 4 to 5 years, he'll be well north of 1,000 points. 2-time Stanley Cup winner as the number 1 center. Adam Fox might be a little bit controversial, but this guy already has a Norris. He has two other Norris finalists. The worst he's ever finished for the Norris outside of his rookie season is 5th in 2022. So yeah, he's a regular season demon. Maybe you can criticize him for his playoffs. Mitch Marner might be getting some hate, but you look at similarly to some of these other guys, he came out of the scene, came onto the scene absolutely flying, was a 60-point guy off rip, so he's already at like 550, 600 points. His raw point totals are going to be so impressive as long as he can be a two-way top 13 to 17 player in the entire NHL. If he can just have one solid playoff run, he's probably going to have the point totals to get in. And then Matthew Tkachuk, similarly to Jack Eichel, rookie, debuted immediately, was highly productive immediately, and as a result, at 26 years old, he already has almost 600 points, and he's a Stanley Cup champion, and he's had that one Hart-level season in 2023 when he had 109 points. So yeah, these guys probably going to be Hall of Famers, but they need to stay at the level that they're at for at least 3 more years. Some of these guys probably 6 years at this level. Okay, next up, we got the Hall of Very Good. I don't think that these 10 are going to end up making the Hall of Fame. Ryan Suter had a very underrated career. He was a top 8 defenseman in his prime for like 5 to 6 years and did have some years that he was sniffing a Norris. I think he was a runner-up one year. If that result flips, I forget who he was going up against. Maybe he could be a Hall of Famer, but just didn't really quite have it. And at the end, the wheels really started to fall off. Claude Giroux has regressed a decent amount this season, where I think that he's not trending. If he stayed after that first season in Ottawa, when he was like 39 goals, 46 assists, or something ridiculous like that. If he gave us 2 to 3 more seasons of that, probably would have been a Hall of Famer, but it's looking like there's been some regression. Meanwhile, a guy like John Tavares just continues to churn out good seasons. Tarasenko did kind of start falling off his final years in St. Louis, and now has fallen off a decent amount in Detroit, where I think his Hall of Fame case is probably gone, even though he is a 2-time Stanley Cup champion. Pietrangelo has an argument. Pietrangelo might have an argument, considering the fact that he is a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, the number 1 defenseman on 2 Stanley Cup winning teams. The individual prime, I just don't think is there. And people are going to scream that he clears Yossi. I just completely disagree with that. I think you're valuing in team success a little bit too much. But out of everybody listed, him and probably John Carlson have the best chance to maybe potentially get in. Ryan O'Reilly, yeah, him going to Nashville might have caked any chances. Maybe he ends up getting traded and can win another Stanley Cup as a second-line center. But at this point, has a Selke, has a Conn Smythe. The 2019 season was Hall of Fame worthy, but outside of that, not quite Hall of Fame. John Carlson, as I mentioned before, maybe if the Capitals go on some kind of wild run, he could end up being a Hall of Famer. But yeah, he had a great prime, but it only was for like 3 to 4 years. Never won a Norris. Came close in 2020. Lost it to Roman Josi, of course. People are going to say, oh, he got robbed. I thought that was about close. It was a toss-up there. But Jamie Benn, you thought after 2014 to 2016, you thought this guy was for sure going to be Hall of Famer when he won the Art Ross and was like all NHL those 3 years, but then he kind of fell off a decent amount. Mark Stone, if he wasn't faking LTIR or actually getting hurt a decent amount, probably could have been a Hall of Famer, but he did kind of come onto the scene late. Insane prime, arguably Hall of Fame prime. Tyler Seguin, great out of the gates in Dallas for like an 8-year stretch after getting traded from Boston. He was a legit top-line point-per-game center back when a point-per-game center meant that you were a top 20, top 15 player in the entire NHL. But yeah, post-injuries, post-COVID, just was not the same player, although he has bounced back decently. And then Matt Duchene having a decent career resurgence, but still, definitely a Hall of Fame, Hall of Very Good guy, not a Hall of Fame guy. Next up, 25 and under that should have a solid shot at the Hall of Fame. I think Celebrini and Bedard, if I was a betting man, I'd say that they're going to be Hall of Famers. I think that they definitely are. Point per game already at 18, 19 years old. They should be good. If they live up to even 80% of Bedard, at least 80% of expectations, Celebrini like 85, 90%, they should be Hall of Famers, and I think they've shown enough. Jack Hughes, you can shit on him after the Four Nations, but this guy, what he has done when 2023 season, 98 points last year, even in a down hurt year, 74 points in 62 games. This year, yet again on pace for 90 to 95 points. Good defensively. He's going to end up having massive raw point totals, probably going to flirt with the Hart. Not saying he's going to win it, but he'll probably be a finalist a time or two and end up being a Hall of Famer. Rasmus Dahlin, it's tough. Like McCarr and Hughes might just shut him out. And then you got Landon DuPont coming relatively soon and Matthew Schaefer. But he still has a solid shot. He's been a top 10, top 8 defenseman since 2023. And out of the gate, he was able to put up decent point totals where he's going to have the point totals. Might not have the Norris to end up winning or end up making the Hall of Fame. Robertson and Heiskanen, if you asked me this 2 years ago with Robertson, he'd be in that tier that you just needed 3 to 6 more star seasons. But he has fallen off a decent amount, but he's playing great of late. So maybe he's getting back to that 2023 form. Heiskanen, similarly to a Dahlin, he might need some team success because I don't think that he's going to be able to win a Norris with him competing against all these great offensive defensemen. So if Dallas wins a cup or two and he's that number one defenseman and he Norris finalists a couple times, he can get in akin to a Chris Letang. But I'd say this tier is like 30 to 60%. Celebrini and Bedard maybe a little bit higher. But yeah, I'd say for Heiskanen, it's probably closer to like 30%. And then Tim Stützle has multiple like point per game around seasons at 22, 23 years old. I think he's probably going to be a top 15 player in 4 to 5 years once that other generation kind of ages out. And I think that he has a decent shot at making the Hall of Fame. And then lastly, we got way too early, but have the potential. Lucas Raymond taking yet another step. Definitely has potential to end up being a Hall of Famer. Matvei Michkov, Fantilli Carlson, that 2023 draft. They're not absolutely killing it right now, but again, they're just like 19, 20 years old. They definitely still have the potential. Logan Cooley has broken out in a big way where he potentially has Hall of Fame potential. Again, this is still like small odds. These guys have not shown enough. Jake Sanderson and Lane Hudson I threw on there. Again, small odds. And then Wyatt Johnson, after a bit of a slow start, monster of late and scored 33 goals, 32 assists, 65 points last year at 20 years old and was dominant in the playoffs. But yeah, this is the groups. I hope that you watched all the way through. I thought it was a fun concept to interestingly break it down instead of just a standard like 95 to 100%, 80 to 95%, 60 to 80. Like I want it to be a little bit unique. Hopefully you like this video. I'm sure this video is going to do pretty much dog shit numbers because I don't know how I'm going to market or title or thumbnail this. But hopefully you clicked on it because that marketing was so good or you just like my videos in general. I appreciate you and I'll be seeing you in the next one.